Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz. He's also the new chair of the Senate Commerce Committee. Senator, thank you so much for your time tonight. Your home state, of course, no stranger to natural disasters. I'm sure you, like the rest of us, are just horrified by the catastrophic images coming in out of California of that devastating wildfire. During his last term, President-elect Trump was accused of at times playing partisan politics with disaster relief funds. Are you confident, as we talk today, that the citizens of Los Angeles County will, in fact, get all of the federal support they need when they begin their long recovery?
Well, Lindsay, what is happening right now in Southern California is truly horrific, and the images we're seeing of homes burning, of people fleeing for their lives, it's heartbreaking, and Heidi's and my prayers are going up for the people of California. You know, my wife Heidi is a native Californian, and much of her family still lives in California. A lot of them live in Southern California, and so we've been reaching out to friends and family, making sure they're okay, and I have every confidence that you will see federal disaster relief there. I'll tell you, at a time of crisis, politics should not play a part in how crisis relief is handled, and I have every confidence, whether it is wildfires in California or a hurricane in Texas or Florida or elsewhere, or whatever the tragedy. It is amazing consistently when tragedy strikes how Americans come together and how they help each other. On your podcast, The Verdict with Ted Cruz, you've talked about how you felt like the odds of a terror attack were as high as they'd been since September 11th. We, of course, saw the tragic scene in New Orleans just over a week ago. The attacker, a U.S. citizen born in your state of Texas. Are you satisfied with the law enforcement response? And what do you think can be done to prevent something like this from happening again? Well, listen, we need to have full transparency. We need to learn the facts of what led to that horrific terror attack in New Orleans. It was the fact that it was an American-born who had been an Army veteran and who was radicalized. We need to discover what warning signs there were. How did this individual get radicalized? What could have been done to prevent it? I will say it was discouraging that immediately after the attack, the FBI's initial response was to say this was not terrorism. You literally had someone driving a truck into a crowd of people, murdering people with an ISIS flag attached to the truck, and it was clearly and unambiguously terrorism. The FBI subsequently corrected that, but I hope we have full transparency on what we know and how this could have been prevented, and the risk of terrorism is magnified by the last 4 years, the open borders that we have had. We've seen 12 million people come into this country illegally. And if you are seeking to wage war on America, if you are ISIS or Hamas or Hezbollah or Palestinian Islamic Jihad, all of whom have called for the murder of Americans, this open border we've had for 4 years has been an invitation for terrorists to cross the border. President-elect Trump will be meeting with Senate Republicans in Washington as your party begins laying out legislative priorities. Of course, chief among them, the economy, tackling inflation, front and center in those discussions. As you well know, America's biggest trade partner is Canada, a longtime ally. President-elect Trump keeps talking about making it the 51st state. Joke or not, is there a danger in upsetting allies like Canada who may decide to send their products elsewhere? Well, listen, this is actually a topic that I discussed at great length in today's podcast, Verdict with Ted Cruz, and I discussed Canada and Panama and Greenland, all of which President Trump have discussed. And I view those on a continuum. With respect to Canada, I think the president is basically trolling Canada. I don't think anyone thinks there's a realistic prospect that Canada will become part of the United States. But I will say it was an epic troll, and I actually think on the merits there are very strong reasons why that makes sense for the United States. Geopolitically, Greenland's location on the Arctic is incredibly important to contribute to the defense of the United States. If, God forbid, we were ever in a military conflict with Russia or China, any ICBMs would come over the Arctic targeting the United States. Greenland is ideally situated to defend America. On top of that, Greenland also has vast resources of critical earth and rare earth minerals that are essential for semiconductors, for electronics, for military equipment. But Greenland at this point is not for sale. So why stake that as such a top priority? Well, because anything can be not for sale until it suddenly is. Denmark right now controls Greenland. And I have to tell you, yesterday, Donald Trump Jr. traveled up to Greenland, visited with people there. I got to say, if you're a Greenlander, the possibility of becoming an American, of becoming an American territory, of getting the benefits of being an American, that is very enticing.
Senator, earlier this week marked an example of a peaceful transfer of power, strikingly different scene than 4 years ago when more than 140 police officers were injured by rioters on January 6th. Several died in the subsequent days. The president-elect has inaccurately said that none of those rioters actually had guns on that day. We know that he's talked about pardons. Should anyone who attacked an officer that day receive a pardon?
So, Linsey, I think there should be a very clear distinction. Anyone who engaged in an act of violence, who violently assaulted a police officer, they should be prosecuted and they should go to jail. Anyone who engages in peaceful protest, free speech is protected by the Constitution of the United States, and that should be protected. So I think pardons are very much in order for individuals that did not engage in acts of violence.
Texas Senator Ted Cruz, we thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Linsey.